Luis Alvarez, the CEO of Alvarez Technology Group, is with us again to talk about how technology is working in agriculture. Thanks for joining us again, Luis.
It is truly the highlight of my week, Rebecca, and I'm not kidding. I really enjoy our little get-togethers. It always cheers me up.
Well, I have to tell you, they're going to have to work on the rest of that week then. So what do you have for us today?
Well, Rebecca, when you think of farmers, you don't necessarily think of innovation in the technology space. But today's agricultural industry is becoming more and more dependent on technology. Some of that is related to the fact that the current generation of farmers, unlike their parents and grandparents, have grown up around technology, and so they're completely comfortable with it. And they understand the competitive advantages that technology offers. But a lot of new dependence on technology is being driven by the need of farmers to get more efficient results. They need to improve yields and lower costs in order to feed a growing planet and not to go bankrupt in the process.
Well, that sounds pretty much like any business. I mean, every industry is using technology to operate more efficiently. But I agree with you that we don't think of agriculture as being that sophisticated.
Well, I can tell you one thing. The growing use of technology in agriculture is not lost on tech companies, and they're starting to make some pretty significant investments in developing agricultural-specific tools and products, particularly in three areas: automation, data analysis, and unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, as we like to call them.
Did you just say farmers are using drones?
I knew that would pique your interest. Yeah, but when you think about it, it's not that big of a stretch. For example, when a farmer mentions automation, what she's talking about is the need to find ways to harvest and package produce with as little human labor as possible. And the reason for this is that the agricultural industry is suffering from significant labor shortages.
Now, we've covered that a few times on our program. It seems that when a crop is ready to pick, every farm and grower in the world is competing for the same laborers.
Absolutely, you got that right. So, there's a couple of things which are aggravating the labor shortage. First off, our country's, let me leave that blank, immigration policies are making it more difficult for the majority of traditional farm labor, the illegal immigrants coming from the south of the border to enter the U.S., and their economies are improving in Central and South America. So many of the laborers that would come up anyway are staying at home because they have better paying jobs and opportunities, which means that there are fewer hands to pick the crops. So farmers are finally doing what most other industries have already done, which is invest in automating simple human tasks. Think of a car company and the kind of factories that they've built to manufacture cars without human workers. Mm-hmm. Ag companies are hoping to develop an entire new area, or a new area of technological innovation that can build a device that can pick a strawberry, for example, or even a head of lettuce better than a field worker. With plentiful labor and low cost in the past, that wasn't worth exploring, but current economic realities being what they are, they're being forced to do this sort of stuff. And much to their surprise, they're finding it a lot easier to do than they thought.
So let me ask you about using data more efficiently. For example, we have lots of meteorological data that we didn't have before, so that must be factoring in also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Really good point. When you think about it, the only way farmers can improve their crop yield and feed a hungrier world is to use data analysis, or what we have called in the past big data, to collate mountains of data that they've historically collected and make better decisions to improve the way that they grow. Even today, many farming operations in the U.S. rely on intuition and that tribal knowledge that they've acquired over time to make decisions, but sometimes that means they can place the wrong bet and their crops will fail. Using big data, farmers can take more of the risk out of the planning decisions and improve their results.
Not long ago, I spoke with a meteorologist for NASA who was trying to get a farmer to use big data analytics, which happened to be tied into NASA's weather analysis, that would allow them to water crops more efficiently, because sometimes farmers think that just because there's a cloud cover, they don't need to water as much, when the heat and evaporation rate could just be the same as a hot day.
Yeah, you're right. There's more science involved than ever before. And as I mentioned before, even drones are playing an increasingly important role in ag, primarily in the area of food safety and surveillance. And if you're like me, you grew up idolizing those, crop dusters, those pilots that would buzz over the fields in their biplanes, laying down this cloud of pesticides behind them. Well, those guys are getting older, and there are fewer of them, so it's becoming cheaper to replace a crop duster with a human pilot. With a drone that could be programmed for precise actions and managed remotely.
Well, I will tell you that crop dusting is very dangerous. It's very difficult and very dangerous. You're trying to get extremely low to the ground so that as much pesticide sticks to the plant as possible. And then you've got to come right on up because typically these farms are surrounded by trees or homes.
Mm-hmm. And, drones have been used for years in Japan, for example, where they're very challenged where they can grow crops because they don't have a lot of wide open spaces like we have in the Midwest. So they've been using drones to lay down pesticides and fertilizer in these little narrow crags of dirt that they can grow their crops in. So it's not unprecedented to do that.
Well, I would even imagine some seed broadcasting would be possible using a drone, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and using precise navigation with GPS and laser rangefinders and even radar, you can be much more precise than some guy in a tractor laying down a bunch of seeds behind them, which means that you have a lot less waste. And you have better production because the seeds that you are laying down are being laid down more precisely.
Isn't it interesting that all of this is being accelerated by a labor shortage? It's that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. As soon as there wasn't any cheap labor, we got our act together and started automating and using data analytics and becoming much more efficient.
Well, we've been working with the ag industry for years, and I know some of the guys, 10 years ago told me that the technology was available and they could make the investment, but labor was so cheap, why bother? And they said one day when the labor gets constrained and we have to find a smarter, better way of doing it, that's when you're going to see the investments, and that's what we're seeing today.
Yeah, well, they were right about it. As soon as labor became too expensive and competitive, we tend to look at automation, but that's been the true for pretty much every industry. But I think we're really seeing a tremendous revolution in agriculture. And I know that you and I are from the central coast of California, so we're seeing it around us every day as we drive past these fields. We're seeing new types of apparatus, and certainly your company works with a lot of agricultural companies as well. Well, we're heading toward 9 billion people around the world, and they all have to eat. So it doesn't look like demand is going to taper off anytime soon. That is all our time that we've got today, but I want to thank you for stopping by again, Louis, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rebecca. This is Louis Alvarez from the Alvarez Technology Group, reminding you that when it comes to technology, forewarned is forearmed.